It is that time again. Today we're going to be recreating another Bleach cover art. This one is going to be chapter 19. I'm going to be using this layout to make a PSG versus Bayern UCL matchday kind of graphic. As I said before in the other Bleach video, I love Bleach's layouts, especially for its chapter covers. They do some very unique things with them. This is one of the easier, less artistic ones, but I still think the layout is quite interesting. And in my last recreation, I actually recreated it basically as similar as possible to how the original was. In this one, I'm more so just going to use the layout as inspiration. So it's going to have the same layout, but have a different look and a different feel to it. So the first thing we should probably do is we should make the boxes themselves, which all of the kind of stadium images and other elements are going to go into, and the player images as well. And to do this, it is very simple, very easy. All we have to do is go to the rectangular marquee selection tool over here and just draw a box. So I'll go ahead and create all of these and make sure everything is aligned. Right, well, now that that's done, I think we're going to put the images in first, because it will help to get an idea of what exactly I need to put and what exactly I need to do for each little square. Okay, I'm kind of liking this. I'm kind of liking the little eye cut off here, similar to how it's kind of the bottom of Ichigo's mom's face right here. But I think this one could work here quite nicely. And now if I put Elise in here, I think this is really cool, because one of the things I really liked about this is how Ichigo is kind of separated between these two. And in this one it's fine, but in this one he's got a little halftone texture as well. So there's that little bit of differentiation as well, which I like. Which I might try and put in my own, but I'm not too sure how it's going to go first of all. Because I know I want to do lighting, one color blue, and then for the Bayern color red obviously. But I like the way that this is kind of looking so far. Alright, so we have finally got all of the elements in. As you can see, these kind of filler spaces I filled with picture of the Allianz Arena. I've got the Bayern crowd here since it's a home game. Another little stadium light kind of section of the Bayern stadium. I've got the two badges here. I'll put verses in between them and then I'll like spice up the badges and whatever else. And then the main text here, just the date, a few details. And then this kind of text at the bottom, it says the chapter kind of title here in English and in Japanese. Instead, I kind of just changed it to All Eyes on Me, and then the names of Dembele and Olise, just as they're kind of the star players, and so all eyes are gonna be on them, and they're of course within their playstyles very flashy and like to show off a lot. I also just realized I should switch the scorelines and the badges around because it's a home game. I don't know how that didn't occur to me before. That's better. Now I think I'm going to put some sort of maybe gradient map or something to spice up the filler images. Or maybe I might just tweak the colors a little bit. Yeah, you know what? I think it will take away from it if I start putting some weird gradient maps over everything. So I think I'm just going to adjust the colors a little bit here and there for these filler images. And then we'll get to work on the fun stuff, being the Dembele panel and the Elise panel. Alright, so this is pretty much what I've got. So these guys are pretty much prepared to go ahead and do any sort of lighting to them. For these, just a simple few adjustments in camera raw and that stuff to colors, contrast, etc. I like this panel here though. This panel here turned out really nice with the badges and stuff. I found a good use case for a nice gradient map in the back here. Then the little verses text is also quite nice with a very slight drop shadow here. A very harsh one as well, which kind of helps it to separate it from the background but not look tacky in a sense. Like it looks a lot more intentional, and also the tiniest bit of bevel and emboss on that. I might not also be keeping the background white. I might also change that up as well. I haven't decided yet, because I think it will make it a whole lot more interesting. And I also need to add the outlines to the boxes as well, but I'm going to do all that once I've done the Dembele and Elise. So let's go do that right now. The plan is I'm going to just do blue lighting for Dembele like I said, and red lighting for Elise. I think I might also add like a stadium or something behind the both of these guys, because even though I haven't put the lighting in yet, I still think it's going to lack depth even if I have that key light there. So just to spice up that background a little bit more, I'm just going to add a sort of maybe stadium or crowd or something. Like this will probably do just fine. And there we go, that just adds so much more visual interest already. Now it's time for the thing that's going to actually make this look like it comes together a bit more. And that is, of course, the highlights. Alright, so this is pretty much what we've got. I've put lighting on both of these guys, I've retouched them and everything, and it looks really good actually. I like the way this Dembele one come out especially, but the Elise one is also pretty good as well. The lighting's pretty nice. All I did to make this happen was a curves layer set to multiply to darken Dembele's skin a bit, a curve set to screen to lighten some of the lighter areas, a black and white in the eyes, and for Elise, the eyes and the teeth a little bit. A layer with exposure up to just accentuate some of the brighter areas again. Color balance, increasing the cyan and the blue to kind of color grade it more towards the blue light source that's going on. Then lighting with a hue saturation layer, of course set to blue. A second hue and saturation layer just to add a bit of extra color bloom, where the light kind of looks like it's more overall on the image rather than being focused highlights specifically, and that just helps to add a bit of realism. Also an exposure layer that has the same mask as the first hue and saturation layer, which helps to brighten those highlights, and because it's using exposure, it actually maintains the texture of the skin and also makes the light a lot more realistic and a lot less flat, because it kind of mirrors how light would act more in real life, if that makes sense. Whereas if you just use hue sat, there's no differences in between the color sort of tones and everything. So as you can see, the original highlights and these brighter areas, like for example here, this harsh white line by his ear, these are all still there because of exposure. Whereas if I turn it off, it's still there, but it just looks flat, and it also colors it to be this same dark blue color. When we put exposure back on, it turns it to more of a lighter blue. So it maintains the highlights and the texture from the original image, but essentially is just not as flat of a color. And of course the exact same process was followed on the Elise picture here. And then these areas on the left of these guys were a bit empty, so I just put in their names and then a little element from the badge. So from the Bayern badge I took the middle bit, and same thing goes for the PSG badge here. Just again a bit more detail really. I also just quickly changed this font right here because I think this font fits a little bit better, because of course it's kind of like a slogan or the main theme of the post essentially. So I think it should be highlighted in that kind of different font and have this as the sub font in this instance. Now I actually really like the way this has turned out, but the white background is not really sitting right with me. I also need to put some outlines on the outside of the boxes, but I'm going to do that a little bit differently and I'll show you guys that when I get to it. So I'm going to try a few different sort of background images that I can put. I think putting it of the stadium is kind of the safest bet here. I quite like the vibe of this one, the picture of the Allianz Arena outside, the kind of drone shot. Now to this, we're going to add a gradient map that's quite dark just to accentuate the boxes themselves. Alright, so I landed on this kind of gradient map, which is taking black, a bit of blue and red, which is kind of the main two colors that I wanted to incorporate, and just making that darker with exposure. And I think that should be a decent enough background, or at least a standard at the very least. Now to these boxes, I'm going to add an outline, but it's not going to be just a normal crisp outline that you would see in normal kind of manga panels, or like I did in the last Bleach recreation. To fit more of the theme of the design and the kind of vibe that's going on, I'm going to instead be having this kind of white outline, very thin outline, and then just erasing part of it in certain areas like here and here. I've done this before and I think it's just a really nice way to add depth and make the outlines look a little bit more interesting than just a normal flat outline. As you can see, there's kind of some fading and some gradients going on. And it's like the line is kind of disappearing and coming back almost. So I'm just going to go ahead and do them for all of these panels here. And hopefully it will make everything look a lot more cohesive and separate the panels from the background. Well, not hopefully, it will. I'm telling you it will. I know how to design, trust me guys. Alright, so that is pretty much done now. I decided to make the black boxes have all of the stroke instead of just some of it, just for differentiation purposes really. Now I'm just going to add a few more things for post-processing, so a few glows, a few other things, just to try and add a bit of extra detail and extra atmosphere really. But I think this is really nice. I quite like the way this has turned out. So let me just go ahead and add a few glows and other things to some areas that might need them. We should be good from there. And then of course finishing off with a camera raw filter and all that stuff. Alright, and we are pretty much done. As you can see, I just added a few extra glows pretty much everywhere really. It made a lot of difference on these white bits, also the text down here as well. And once again, here is the original, and then here is my adaptation. So like I said, the layout has pretty much remained the same, but what I've done different from the last time I did this was that I basically spiced up everything, made everything in a completely different style. I leaned more into my traditional way of sports designing, how I normally do things. But it was very fun to work with different layouts, different compositions. And that's why I think recreating these Bleach chapter covers is just so fun. Because again, like I said in my last video, how to be more experimental, if you haven't seen that, go check it out. You can draw inspiration from so many places. Sports designers are not doing composition like this very rarely, but this is something that manga actually excels at because of the way it is in general. And of course the last one was a lot closer to what the actual one looked like, with all the halftones and different colours and stuff. But this one again just goes to show that you don't need to copy your inspiration completely. I've taken the layout of this basically for the purpose of the video. If I was doing this myself, I wouldn't have necessarily taken this entire specific layout. I would have taken certain things that I liked. So for example, having only half of the face here was a dynamic that I thought was pretty cool. And also having part of Ichigo here bleed onto a different panel. Those are kinds of the things that I would have taken and try and adapt it in my own way with a different sort of composition in mind. But of course, for the purpose of the video, I followed it as best as I could. And I think everything just turned out really well. Basically, the exact vision I had in my mind was executed. And I think this background is also quite interesting. Again, a lot of cool things like distortion, displacement maps, and this cool gradient map that kind of takes on black, red and blue, so all of the main colors of this foreground, and implements them really well actually into this background, just to add a bit of extra detail that might have been lost, for example, in just a plain solid color black background or even a white background like of course this is. But yeah, that is my rendition of the Bleach chapter 19 cover with the context of Bayern PSG in mind. What a game this is going to be, by the way. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments. Let me know if there's any other anime or manga that you would want me to take inspiration from. If you're interested, I will also be putting this PSD on my Patreon, link in the description. Like, subscribe, all of that, and I'll see you in the next one. Ha!
Okay, that's all the time I've got.